need for a larger group of individuals, and you split out into maybe groups of 4 or 5 real time, and maybe just do some sorting and being able to notify individuals through maybe a display or even a message that can go out via Discord. This application will do it real time and create an interface for doing it on the fly that makes it really convenient for getting a group split up when you want to break things down maybe in the middle of a meetup or something along those lines. A lot of different applications for it for groups that meet up and split into smaller groups. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the website here just to check it out. So I'll go over and move over into this. So this is the site with just some info about the application. So the address is going to be grpgather, so short version of group and then gather. And then here right now on this page is really just some info about it. Again, talking a little bit about some of the main points of the application being used real time for group management, and then also just that release information, as well as the fact that your individual showing up and getting sorted into these groups don't actually have to create an account. It will basically keep track of people based on an email address that's given. It doesn't even necessarily need to be a real address. Hopefully it would be, but it's really just to identify individuals and being able to put them in the group, and then even on later a date, maybe even put them back into the same group based off of other meetups that you have before. So this main page, if you want to check out any other info or get the connection link for reaching out for potentially getting involved with it. So, all right, let's move on to the application itself. So I've got it over here. I've logged in to the main panel. There'll be a dashboard. It's just giving me some information about the environment and the version that I'm working with. And I'll start to talk about the navigation bar up here at the front. So the user list, everything that I've got right here, this is a staging environment. So this user list is not real people. This is just kind of test data that's been fed into this particular system. We'll start at our kind of base user object. So as it's come in, it talks about when the date joined is, gender information, as well as the referral source. And then a lot of other fields that can be filled in. And those kind of come through a little bit more of like the form that gets filled out on a sign-in basis, as well as a registration. So there are 2 ways that a user can be entered into the system, and I'll go over both of those. But in the light that maybe they weren't entered in correctly, either through the sign-in process or the registration form, you can come back here and edit these individuals, coming through changing their name, email, password information. I mentioned earlier that users don't need an account to really go through getting sorted and put into groups, but we do use user objects for some of the facilitation of the app, so that's where a password might be used for creating an account. So phone number information, date of birth, date joined, gender, referral source. It might be the sign-in or maybe a registration, or even as when we register users, we might say that something a little bit more specific about how they found out about our organization or our group. And then I've got 3 roles. Admin is going to be full administration of the system for being able to handle the other group objects that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. Facilitator allows for this individual to be kind of we'll say kind of subgroup leader that we'll talk about, and there'll be a facilitator and a co-facilitator. So giving an individual this facilitator role allows them to be added in. Editor is really just to be able to go over some of the user information as well as see the reports, and then not so much the real-time sorting mechanisms. Any joining comments, and then when they would come as a kind of a new member, there are some welcome parameters here that you could set as far as being able to reach out to them at a later date. So those are the user objects in and of themselves. And now let's start to talk about groups. So this is where we're going to kind of get to a bread and butter of how many groups are we going to have, and those users that are going to be showing up to each of our events through either a regular basis or maybe even just as a kind of a one-time thing. These are the groups that will be used to kind of sort and maybe load balance if we want to on our own. And as I just mentioned, there are facilitators that can be assigned to these. And so I've just created 4 generic ones here. I've just named them blue, green, red, and yellow. They don't even need to be colors. They could be, if you want to make them animals or names of regions or whatever you want to, you can change the name. Being active just means that they're able to be assigned to ledgers, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then facilitate information and even any public comments. These are going to show on some of the communications that go out. So it might be good to put in where the group is meeting, or if there's a main room you're meeting in and then splitting off. these public comments will display to those users and kind of give them an idea of where to go. So I can go into edit those fields anytime, whether it be the name, whether it's active or not, the comments that will be seen, and then this facilitator list is all those individuals that have been assigned that facilitator role. Okay, so the 2 fields for that. And now we're going to talk about ledgers. So ledgers are, in essence, a meeting time. When you're going to meet for a week or at a particular time during the week, ledgers are really an active list of users and really have a start and end time that I would, put in here as far as when our event's going to start, and then the groups assigned and referencing. So the ledger ties all of these pieces of information together. But a ledger really can kind of live on. It really can just either be open or closed, and other ledgers can be opened up later. And this allows for a lot of flexibility. If the event maybe goes a little bit longer than expected, they can be reopened up. And really a release is saying like, hey, this is when we're actually splitting up our group into 4 groups, and here are the names in each of the groups. So ledgers are a little bit more of an active live object in the system. And again, I could probably, I could go through, create a ledger. I'm just going to edit it for now. But what I've given is a ledger name for meeting in July, week 4. This one is currently opened, and I have a start time of a particular date of like, we're going to start at 2 p.m. and we're going to end the event at 10 p.m. And then the reference ledgers. So this is going to look back at any history based off of email address of any users that would have possibly come before, and we can put them back into the group that they would have been assigned in a previous ledger. So adds for a bit of a cohesiveness if you do want to kind of keep groups for a while, and you can stack up some reference ledgers to make sure that takes place. But of course, new individuals who haven't been here before and weren't ever signed in on any of those ledgers, they'll be displayed as a new user, and you can put them into a group that might be most appropriate for them for that evening or day. And then the assigned groups. So me choosing that those groups are active in that other screen is what makes them show up here as far as the assigned groups. And as there is text here, you can use the control button to change up these selections, and then I could update this one. I'm not going to update it, so I'm just going to go back to the ledgers section. Actually, click releases, we'll go back to ledgers. And then that's pretty much it for right now for talking the main idea of a ledger. And then releases is going to be kind of our end result, right? This is what we're building towards with this app, is taking a larger group of individuals and then sorting them into these groups. And so this is where that information is going to be displayed that we've put together in users signing in, the groups available, and then the ledger. And then we have what's an official release, being when we've kind of decided, okay, now is when we need to notify everybody of their split out groups. And right now we just have the facilitators shown here. If there was co-facilitators, those would be displayed here as well. But again, this message comes up in this nice display area that could be moved onto a monitor that might be displayed into the room, as well as there is a back-end result of sending a message to Discord, and you can do that via webhook into a Discord community that your group may already use. So 2 ways of having that displayed. So if you wouldn't necessarily have Discord, not a huge deal. This display mechanism here would be a great way of showing your different split-off groups. Okay, let's back up a little bit, and we'll go over to ledgers to really show the heart of being able to reassign users. So within assignments here, there is this reassign link. When I go in here, this is giving me a real-time view of our current assignments within this ledger. So we're before the release, we're going through and actually being able to change these assignments. So the ledger already had in these groups that we already have assigned. So we've got several individuals that came in before, and so because we referenced those previous ledgers, they are existing users, and that's why we see these people being labeled as a yellow banner here in status, and it's showing that their existing group is blue. And then we have gender information just to kind of help if you need to load balance as well. And then individuals who have shown up just specifically as new for this event and not being existing in any of our other reference ledgers for this is going to show as new. And the reason that there is also this label here for blue or yellow or so forth is really just to show where they originally got assigned by the system. So when they signed in, there's really just kind of a round robining of assigning groups. It may not necessarily load balance, so when you do get in here, you might see a bit of lopsidedness when people are getting signed at the very beginning of your event night. So load balancing can be something you can do to kind of come in and move them around. But yeah, you'll start to see as you move individuals around, where were they originally at? Where did the system first put them in? So for this one, this blue group, for instance, this Ethan individual would have been given the yellow group up front. So over here we have these buttons that if we need to move individuals around. So say I did want to move them back to that group, I could go over here and just say yellow. As soon as I click this button, it's actually going to refresh the page and give me a banner notification that this individual has been moved over into the yellow group. And if I look down there, that is correct. So now they've been moved back to the original group. If I want to go ahead and reverse that, I can just go back and move them right back to blue. Then we start to see these member counts here to also help us load balance. So we have 11 members here in the blue group, 11 in yellow, 11 in red, and 11 in green. So things are pretty well load balanced already. But if I did need to move individuals, I can go ahead and start doing that. I can do it with existing individuals as well. So for instance, this Sophie Brown, I'm going to go ahead and move over into the green group. So I was able to move that individual. So if I really didn't need to, or there was just a reason that they needed to switch groups for this particular event, that can happen. So as we see now, this individual is now underneath the green group. And we have that information that actually they were part of red. So we kind of have that referenced as something that we don't get too confused by. If maybe we did make a wrong assignment here, I can go ahead and hit red and moves them back into that group that they were in previously existing. Okay, and if an individual accidentally signed in twice by using 2 email addresses, or somebody had to leave early, you can remove an assignment. This isn't deleting the user or anything. This X would just remove their login. Another piece that can be helpful is just knowing what email address they did sign in on behalf of. They might come up and say, hey, I was here last week and I was a part of the green group. Am I still in that group? And you see them as being a new registration in blue or yellow. You can mouse over and say, well, hey, the email address that we have for you is this one at demo.org. Is that the same email address you used before? And they might say, no, I used a different email address. And that would be the reason why they're showing as a basically new sign in on this and not as an existing one to get put back in their group. So just as a note to have them maybe go back and re-sign in with their other email address and put them back, or you can just move them yourselves and then remove the actual sign in that they had with the improper email address. So this is a lot of where that real-time movement and bread and butter is of the system. If you do have this page brought up, it is a pretty static layout for right now, just to kind of keep the app as kind of non-bloated when it comes to a graphic interface. So if you do know people are signing in and they're not displaying, go ahead and hit this refresh button. That will then refresh the page, and any other sign-ins that just happened as somebody walked in and finished their sign-in form will be here. So I always just kind of go up here and hit refresh, just a little extra, just to kind of give myself a nice little view. So when we do get to that point of where we're ready to go and we're feeling confident about the list that we have, we can go back to the ledgers area. And then over here, there is a release section. And I can go in here to a prep. So release, what this is bringing up is that comment section that we filled out for each of the groups. Here you have the ability to change this before it goes out into the release. This is not going to save in the database, so this is very much a temporary kind of on-the-fly change of text before it actually does go out on the screens or in the Discord message. But do note that this is not saving on the back end. So if you do want to make that one more permanent change for the group, be sure to go back to the group section and edit that comment field to whatever you had to, right before you hit release. So I'm not going to hit it right now, but if I was to hit this release button, it will go ahead and pop over to the release screen for me being able to show that release of the night. And then also, as soon as me pressing this red button, we'll send out that Discord message as well. So then just to kind of mimic it, as I would hit release, this will pop, and you can move it over into whatever screen that you might have as a dual monitor setup. Cool. Okay. That's running through actually the ledger change-ups and also the prep area, and then the full release of actually getting out to individuals. So now let's talk a little bit more about the actual sign-in process for users. Right here, I put a start time and an end time, and I have this state being open. All three of these basically have to be in a kind of an active state, or kind of a light switch on ability for users to actually sign in. So not only we also want to make sure there's always just one open ledger. So if you come in here and you see that you forgot to close the ledger, be sure to go back and do that. So that way we have the proper sign-in form pop for users. The state needs to be open, as well as the start time and end time needs to be current for users to be able to get in here, or at least complete the sign-in process. And I'll show a little bit about what that looks like. So let's go over here, and we're going to open up a new tab here, and this is what our users are going to see. I believe I do. Sign in. Let's see if I got this right. Yeah, I did the no hyphen. Okay, so we'll go over here. Oops, that's still wrong. There we go. If I was to just go to the sign-in link here, there's going to be a sign-in ID. That is because each and every ledger is going to be its own unique ID for being able to complete this sign-in process. Those IDs will get generated at the time that a ledger gets created. So for instance, if I was to go over here for this ledger and I go in and edit it, you're not really going to see it up front. There are different ways that we provide for users to get this link, but just know that it's unique. And so right now, this ID up here that's in the URL, as we kind of went to go edit it, is the actual ID. So, and I go back to this sign-in area, this will be the ID to use. Our users won't be using this link. There's a different way to get to the form, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. But for right now, let's go ahead and just assume that we have that link provided to the user. This is the ID. I'll hit submit here, and then boom, we're at the form that's needed. So what I'm going to do now is put in some information here, and we'll just do, like, I don't know, last name. And then I can put in an email address of just, I don't know, spam. Okay, and then choosing male or female, and then hitting sign in. And I can show where this can be adjusted in the settings. And then as I would click sign in, that is then what's going to sign me into that particular ledger for this individual. And so by clicking this sign in, that's then what prompts the information to show up in that particular ledger. Now, if I did hit submit here and sign in at a time that's outside of this range, it will give me an error. Also, if the state is moved to close, it will also give me an error not being able to sign in. The reason these are very specific to the time and also the state is because we just don't want really web crawlers being able to fill out this form. So really this ID is going to be only really specific, and the ability to even sign in is very much limited to the unique instance of your event, as well as the time, as well as the state of the ledger. And that's so web crawlers are going to be really thrown off by using a form that's going to be open, because this is how we allow for the feature of no real account setup preliminary in order to get signed in to this application. It's really just using an email to then pull the user and information about when they previously signed in, so on and so forth. So there is really no full user check. We're really just using accounts based off of email address within the system. And the sign-in process, if it doesn't find a user or user object, it will create them, put them in the system, so that way they can be referenced for a future login. So that is how sign-in works. There is a QR instance that we do provide so that you can give individuals a QR code that would be specific to the week, that would then link their page and bring them on their phone. And so this form is very mobile friendly, so that way as people are coming in, they scan the QR code, it will go ahead and pre-populate the sign in with the proper ID, And this form is just right here ready to go for them, and they can go ahead and fill it out and hit sign in and then be in your ledger ready to assign. All right, cool. So that's most of the processing that happens only from a user perspective, but also the admins setting up most of the configuration settings. What I'm going to talk a little bit about now is also the register user. So when signing in through this form, and I mentioned that this would create a user if they didn't already exist. Also, there is a registration form. So if people are giving you information about maybe a get to know you form or just general contact information, you can come over here and just enter them already into the system. So by giving their first, last name, and of course email being important there. Phone number, date of birth, you might have more of that information coming through a form for your organization. And then that referral source and comments. When you hit register, it puts them into the same databasing system for the users. So then this account or object would be referenced on their first sign in. But this is a way of getting them into the system ahead of time with a little bit more information. Okay, the other part I want to talk about is then moving on into the reporting section. So we've already had our event take place. We want to go back and look at some history information. So within the users area, this is just the user database itself, how many users have joined over time. And you'll get a little bit of stats on how when people got entered in either through a registration or register user process or sign in. This is just a blanket one over the board for the system. This is then going to be just a breakdown of male and female, just to give yourself a little bit more of a gender reporting. And then we'll go into the assignment reports. So these are going to be very specific to those individuals who have come in through the sign-in form, got assigned, and now are part of a release within the system. So total assignments is going to show per each of your ledgers that you have. So each of these lines represents that, and then the actual amount of people that did sign in that night. So for July week 2, we had 39 people, and then July week 3, we had 21 people assigned. So it gives you an attendance sheet for each of those ledgers that you do have. We have a little bit of a split off here just then by gender assignment, and then also newcomers, so individuals who had signed in a ledger that hadn't been in the system before. So it gives us a great idea of how many new individuals we have entering into the system, haven't been there before. And then assignments by group, just to give you an idea of how well you might be load balancing your users for each of the groups, and then seeing which ones might have gotten a little bit more. Hopefully with our load balancing, we can try and get to a point where we might have a week like this where we have it split for an exact match for each of the groups. But hey, sometimes that is not always the case, and so one group might have more. This red group had 7, and then this group only had 3 for one of them. So you'll see a little bit more of that breakdown with the assignments by group. And that is reporting based off of those ledgers, and that come out in those releases. So assignments is a great way to look at that. Okay, and then ledgers here, this is a little bit more of a historical information just to kind of see where the assignments are. So I can go ahead and view the assignments here and just see a real time how that is getting released. So just a quick way of getting to the list. Full walkthrough of the group gather web app. So if you have any application that might be interesting for you for using this in kind of that RIL real life scenario, please let me know. Feel free to comment if you thought it was at least a cool app. If you wouldn't mind giving me a like and subscribe to my channel, talk a lot about a lot of different tech items and really hit a lot of VoIP topics as well. But if you wouldn't mind, just give me a little comment about other stuff you might like to see or other questions you might have about this app. Would really appreciate it. So thanks for watching.